This is a production of kmmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, for some of us, we're a year older. And for some of us, we're baby boomers. And in that generation, we have got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about babyboomer.org. We've got Gramps Jeffries, which is his pen name, and his real name is Mark Joseph. And he's one of the co-founders of babyboomer.org. But first, we got to talk to a non-baby boomer, and that would be Eric. How are you, my friend?
Hey, good afternoon and happy birthday, Kevin.
Well, thank you very much. It's one of those.
Are you having a good one so far?
So far, so good. It's when your birthday is on a day like today, it's kind of like people go, "Oh, it's your birthday." Oh, you're on the 11th. Yeah. Well, what do you do? Well, what do you do? I came first. That's all I got to say is I came first.
Right.
Yes, indeed.
Well, I like that you've got a giant blimp above Seattle, apparently, celebrating your birthday. So that's great.
Yeah, if you're driving, don't look up. Just take our word for it. There's a blimp above your head.
If folks watching the video will understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, indeed. And we want to thank you, Eric. How's the weather going to be this week for everybody?
It looks like it's going to be kind of cloudy and a little bit cooler, but very comfortable. And then Friday looks like it's warming up again. So summer's not done.
No, we're not done with that yet. And by the way, just so everybody knows, Positive Talk Radio can be heard right here on KKNW, 1150 AM, Mondays at 3, Wednesdays at 4, and Fridays at noon. And then we are very lucky because we get to also be with Eric on Kixie at 3 p.m. on Fridays. So it's great fun, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
True story.
Indeed it is. And our guest today, he's really well known. His first book, The Secrets of Retailing and How to Beat Walmart. I want to talk about that a little bit today. And also parenting and that kind of stuff, but mostly about babyboomer.org. But a gal by the name of Ariana Huffington read his book and liked it so much that she asked him to become a regular contributor on the Huffington Post. So he's written over 100 articles for them about small businesses, education, the homeless, and several other nonprofit topics near to all of us. With that, I would like to welcome Gramps to the show. Gramps Jeffries, a.k.a. Mark Joseph. How are you, my friend?
Great to be here. And I got to wish you a happy birthday myself. You know, the really solidified you being a baby boomer, right? Keeping you in the birthday. You know, what's interesting is my daughter was born a day before, September 10th. So I was reading this article that the most popular day for birthdays is September 9th. And my wife and I were saying, why? What happened? Why are so many people born September 9th? You know, my daughter was on the 10th and you're on the 11th. Just count back 9 months, figure out what was going on that caused that big boom.
It was New Year's Eve, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Think about that. Yeah, that's true in every generation, but it's also true with us baby boomers too. So thank you for inviting me to the show.
Oh, it's awesome for you to be here. I love, by the way, if you listen to Positive Talk Radio on a regular basis, if you go to babyboomer.org, scroll down a little bit, you'll see my shining face and a link to our latest podcast, because we are part of babyboomer.org. And so all 570 something shows are up there, and you can go scroll down and listen to them straight from there. They also feature other great podcasters and a lot of really good information about things that interest us who have been on the planet a little bit longer and stuff. One of which is, we grew up in a time. I remember, Mark, when I could go to a grocery store and nickel candy was actually a nickel. Do you remember those days?
Yes, yes. It's hard to explain to your grandchildren today the value of that back then. But those were the days.
Oh yeah, and the other thing that you could get that isn't even available anymore is you could get a package of cigarettes that was made out of chocolate. And the little cigarettes were filled with chocolate and stuff. I don't know if you remember that, but my dad was a smoker, so that was kind of like I could be cool and be smoking, but it was chocolate.
And they had candy cigarettes too, which obviously they don't have today.
Yes, so many things have changed. And you know what's interesting about the baby boomer generation? I'm not sure we touched on it before, but it's like my former wife was born in '64, so she was at the very very tail end, but she doesn't remember. And a lot of people that were born after in the early to mid '60s and who don't really qualify as baby boomers, they don't remember the '60s, and their earliest memories may be the moon landing, maybe, or something like that. But the '60s was a really interesting time to live, don't you think?
Yes, it was, especially depending on where you grew up. I grew up in a small town, so I think I had a little bit different experience than some of the kids in the bigger towns. Uh, but because, when we were growing up, that was right in the heart of the Vietnam War. And when you think about it, I mean, Biden just made relationships the last couple of days with Vietnam stronger than ever. And you step back and think about this whole generation that we grew up with, all these people that were fighting in the Vietnam War, and now we've got great relationships with this country. It just shows you how life evolves.
And it really is true. And for those of you that don't remember, I want to take you back because there was Huntley and Brinkley were on one channel, and we only had seven or like five channels at the time, and CBS, ABC, and NBC, and then a local affiliate, maybe, and then PBS probably. But I remember every night at 6 o'clock watching Walter Cronkite talk about the news. And it wasn't like it is today where you've got all of these people who have all of these opinions. They're more opinion people than they are news people. And in those days, Walter Cronkite, it was on for a half hour every day, and it was all about what was happening in the news. And I don't know about you, but I felt like I could trust Uncle Walter. As a matter of fact, that's what we used to call him, was Uncle Walter.
That really separates the baby boomer generation from the generations of today. When you think about it, we all grew up with the same few television stations. We all had landlines. I mean, think about it. If you wanted to talk to anyone, you picked up the phone and you had landlines. So the information that we got as baby boomers was very concentrated. And yes, we did trust, Walter and the others because they were the authority. But step back a second. Think about this generation today. Where do they get their information? Everywhere. I mean, on their phones, on the internet, they get all kinds of information different than we did. So the one thing that baby boomers have in common is this shared experience of growing up with that same information. Our generation is as diverse as any other generation before and after us, whether it's about religion or politics or diversity, we had us all the same information. So we grew up with all the same content and all the kind of same education. When we grew up with the favorite music. Think about all the great music we grew up with. Whether it was Elvis or the Beach Boys or the Beatles or Three Dog Nights, the Association was one of my favorites, and the Supremes. They all got us together. That music pulled us all together. All the movies we grew up with, whether it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Jaws, any of the Spielberg movies, Animal House, Star Wars, The Godfather, they became a common ground for us. And so we had all this information. It was, I don't want to say fed to us, but it was all came to us with the authority we had. And that's how we grew up as a generation. And our generations growing up now are just growing up so differently.
It's a different time, and people are getting information from sources that are not necessarily there in for the same reasons that they were back in the 60s, because now it's about clicks. How many clicks can you get? And sometimes, because of the sensational aspect of the topic that they're talking about, they can get pretty sensational because they get more clicks, because then they can make a little bit more money. And rather than when I in those days, it was journalism was something that they really took pride in, that they were journalists. And I just think you mentioned the Vietnam War. I distinctly remember the casualty counts coming, and I'm sure you do too, watching the news and the casualty counts and the talking about the different aspects of the war, about Saigon and the Bay of Tonkin and all of these things. And we kind of grew up with all of that, and it's so different today. Well, even the college scene was way different back then, because of the anti-war protesters and Bobby Kennedy's assassination and Martin Luther King. Those were really interesting days, and I wish everybody could have gone through them to understand a little bit about where we are today and how we got here. Because you and I have been around on the planet for a while now, and so we have a better understanding of how we got to where we are today than somebody that was born. Did you know that there are people born after 9/11, 2001 that are allowed to vote?
It's interesting that we're talking about this subject on 9/11, on September 11th,
Yes.
because this is the day of reflection. And we should all be thinking about, what has happened in the past and what has built this country into what it is today.
I agree. And it's important for us to all, like you said, reflect upon that particular day and what happened in the years to follow, and where we went down a bit of a rabbit hole and went to the war in Iraq and stuff like that. So, it's important for people to look at history in its totality. And if you don't know about history, go talk to somebody my age or somebody Mark's age, because if you have a idea about, I'd like to know what it was like to live in 1968. I can tell you, I was there.
That's one of the reasons we built babyboomer.org is a place for us to not only reflect. In other words, there's lots of information on our site about the 60s and 70s and growing up, and a lot of our contributors are from the 60s and are in their 60s and 70s, so they are contributing about what happened back then. But because the baby boomer generation is so diverse, we wanted to make sure that we covered all kinds of things beyond the history. But, what are we living with today? We offer resources for retirement and finance and travel, but we also are dealing with all the new challenges that you and I and our generation are facing. The technological advances, we kind of hit on them. There's lots of things that are available today that were never available when we were growing up. And our health issues. Whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's, we need to be talking about all that and understanding all that. So that's why we pulled together babyboomer.org, is to have one place where not only our generation could go and find about the past and the present and what's going to happen in the future, but our kids' generation and our grandchildren's, so that they have a place to kind of say, who are these guys, these baby boomers? Why do they keep talking? What are they talking about? And so that's one of the reasons we did build this site.
And it's a great site, by the way, and it is chock full of all kinds of information, and some of it's news, some of it's newsworthy, some of it has to do with our retirement and how to put that together. Some of it has to do with becoming, there are lots of guys, myself included, that I retired from regular work, but I didn't retire from life. I continued to do what I want to do, which is this podcast and the radio show. And it's an entrepreneurial existence. And don't you think that everybody, I know that there are lots of people my age or a little bit older who are now not feeling as good as they did, and they've kind of retired from life. I don't want to do that. And I think that babyboomer.org is a great resource if you don't want to retire from life. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, we're all looking to figure out what is going to be our legacy. How are our kids going to remember us? How are their kids going to remember us? And so I think that's one of the challenges that we all have in the baby boomer generation is, we when I looked at my parents when they were in their 60s, I would say, boy, they are old.
Boy,
But
no kidding.
now that we're there, now that we're there in our 60s and 70s, I don't feel old. I don't feel like I want to tie it in. What is our second place that we're going to go? What other things can we do? You know, we can do these great entrepreneurial things like you're doing, or we can worry about how are we going to give back. What are we going to do to help influence the next generation, the following generation? One of the great things that happens as you grow older is for every decade that you get older, you get smarter. And the only reason you get smarter is because you make a lot more mistakes. So you got all these mistakes that you can learn from that make you just a little bit smarter than you were 10 years ago. And so we as a generation need to make sure that we're passing that on, that we're not being selfish and saying, okay, I've retired. I'm going to go on and do my own thing. I'm going to go play pickleball. Let my kids worry about taking care of their kids. We have got to get beyond that and share our experiences. Because when it all comes down to it, when you're gone, you can't take anything with you.
No.
No matter how wealthy you are or how smart you are, you can't take it with you. So it's up to us to pass it on, to make sure that what we learned is passed on to the younger generation, so they don't have to go through all this hassle that we may have gone through. So if you step back and think about that, that's one of the things that we should be doing at our age.
Well, you know what I'll tell you, I got an interesting story. At least it's interesting to me. Yesterday I went and went into mourning because I was watching the Seahawk game with my son. And it was just really was a sad, 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 sad moment. But anyway, he recently got married to a lady who has two children. One's a 10-year-old, one's a 3-year-old, 4 now. And they have two different fathers. One father's involved, the other father's not involved, and especially with the 4-year-old. And so I've made it my mission to become a friendly Grandpa McDonald to this cute little kid, and to try and help him. And I certainly hope that I'm going to make it long enough to be able to help him and his stepdad, who's my son, and his wife, and help him through some of the issues that he's going to have. And it's my first opportunity to do that. It really is fun to have a little one who's 3 or 4 or 5 look at you and smile like they're happy to see you. You know what I mean?
That's one of the reasons I wrote my children's book, I Don't Want to Turn 3, because I was lucky enough that I wrote it during the pandemic because COVID-19, because we were in isolation, with our families, because they were the only ones we could really be with. And so I was lucky enough to be able to have all 6 of my grandkids here at one time for about 6 weeks. So it gave me a chance to kind of watch and interact with these grandkids. I got to tell you what a trip, because all 6 of these kids have completely different personalities.
Yep.
But the one thing they do have in common is a sense of curiosity. I'm sure you saw that with your 4-year-old. Sense of curiosity. How excited they get when they do accomplish something. Watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really is the basis for my book. And it's, the book is I Don't Want to Turn 3. by Gramps Jeffery. But what goes through a toddler's mind? The parents are so desperate to understand. When does a real toddler understand the difference between me and us? This book kind of talks about how the family finds that out together. I'm sure you have found that same thing as you're dealing with your 4-year-old. As a baby boomer, I'm trying to understand how the world has evolved since I was 3 and 4 years old. That's also part of the story. Like we talked about, my parents didn't have cell phones. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable television. They didn't have remotes. You and I were our dad's remotes saying, "Sons, go change the channel." Those were the days that we were growing up with. My parents' definition of discipline was a lot different than the way my kids have discipline as I see in them today. And obviously I think they're doing a much better job than I ever did. But so that's what we're dealing with these younger children. And you're absolutely right. As grandpa, you got to pass it on. You got to teach them, because what happens is, in today's world, I'm convinced that these kids 1 to 10 years old today are going to be the smartest generation this country has ever produced, because as soon as they come out of the womb, they're on the internet. They got cell phones. They're tied to all this information, and it's our jobs as grandpas and gramps to kind of let them know that there's a world out there besides the internet. Let's go play some soccer. Let's go watch some football. Let's do things together that are different than just being on the internet. And if we can step back and say that's our role, how do we expose these kids? Because they're going to be so smart when they grow up. But how can we make sure that they understand the reality of things that you and I had to do when we were growing up too?
Exactly. And it's important for them to recognize that yes, times are different, and yes, they've got a lot of things that we didn't have, but I think, in our generation, are a little bit more grounded. I mean, we would go outside, and it's really sad. And I've mentioned this on the show before. I think it's really sad. I don't see kids riding a bike anymore, very, very much, or a group of kids riding bikes. I don't see a group of kids at the ball field playing a pickup game. Just the kids, no adults taking care of them. Those things used to be commonplace, and they're not anymore, because everybody's inside with their devices and stuff like that. And that, in many ways, that's too bad. But at the same time, they can do things with a cell phone that I can't do at all. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you figure this baby boomer generation, this older generation that we are, if we have a mission, that's our mission. Get them outside, get them to do things, teach them how to ride the bike. Let's play a little ball with them. That may be the mission we have to round out, so these kids do become better than we ever were.
Exactly. And we hope to keep them on the straight and narrow, and understanding how life works a little bit, because we've been through it somewhat. Some of us, a lot of us, have had a lot of experiences, both good and bad, and we have worked through them and gotten to where we are today. So I think because I'm like you. When I was younger, I was singing. I can't sing. I was thinking to myself, "Gosh, what's it going to be like to turn 66 years old?" And it was like, "Oh, I'll probably be dead. But if I'm not, 66 is really old. I don't feel really old. I'm okay. I feel good and stuff, and I continue to want to make a difference. I think that's important for us old folks, to continue to want to make a difference, however that looks for each person.
Yeah, but when you think about it, what really are the role of parents and responsibilities today? What are parents supposed to do, and how can we supplement that? Well, in today's world of instant information, uncertainty, cruelty, differences in ideas, what really is the true role of parents? Obviously, parents provide their children with what they need, with the food and the clothing and a place to live. They also should be providing, obviously, financial support, medical care, opportunity to receive an education. That's the role of children, of parents today, and that was the role when we were parents too. And they have to protect their children from harm, or provide them with safe environment. That in today's world, where you read about something going on bad in schools and so forth every week, that's a major shift that we have to worry about as parents. But because parents are the most influential people for our children, they have more power to bring good qualities to their daily lives. Traits, the parents should be striving to instill in their kids, are honesty, when you think about it. We as grandparents should be reinforcing this, but honesty, responsibility, kindness. Step back a second, think about how cruel this world has become. If we can get this next generation full of kindness, what difference will that make? We got to teach these kids independence, got to teach them respect, positive thinking. Your radio show is Positive Talk Radio. We got to teach kids positive thinking, creativity, how to draw, how to learn, how to use their imagination. They've got to learn healthy eating habits and exercise better than our generation did. Success can also be learned from failure, just like we're learning generation to generation, decade to decade, how from failure. We got to teach them they can learn from it too. But the one thing the parents' responsibility is to teach their kids how to have fun. We got to make sure that this greatest generation coming up has as much fun as we did when we were growing up.
I agree. Having, life can be sad and it can be difficult, but if you can't have any fun, then it's not really worth hanging out. So you got to really enjoy, and you can do that without just sitting there looking at your device, and getting out and going places. And I hope to be able to take my grandkids, when he's age appropriate, be able to take him to the forest or to different places, or to the beach or something, and have an experience, and to help them, and to develop a good working rapport with them, so that they feel like, and I don't know if every grandparent feels this way, but I do. I want them to feel like I can be a trusted friend and advisor, rather than I'm older than you, so I'm in charge. I want to be able to say, I trust in what you're saying and what you believe, unless it's not. Anyway, but I would really like you to consider this or consider that, and see where they go, see what they do.
Yeah, I'm sure that you and I both have great stories about how we remember our grandparents. What influence were they on us? What are the things that we're doing today that they really made a difference in? And, we just want to pass that on to the latest generation.
I want to talk about that, because I want to talk about my grandma when we come back from this break, because that was maybe the most influential person in my life. And I want every baby boomer to think about this. And by the way, go to babyboomer.org, and you can sign up for the website. There's all kinds of great information there. And we're talking with Mark Joseph, but I want to just mention that when we talk about legacy, I'm one of the few people left who remembers my grandma, and she was something special. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio on KKNW 1150 AM. We'll be right back after these messages. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So, what's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits, beyond expenses, to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, You can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. It's KKNW. It's a Monday afternoon. It's 9/11, and I hope that everybody will take the appropriate time to just, even if you just be quiet for a moment and have a moment of reflection, like Mark said earlier. I think that would be a great way to honor the people who passed on that day and all the people who subsequently have passed due directly or indirectly to that event. Mark Joseph is with us. He's the co-founder of babyboomer.org. babyboomer.org. Go there, and it's a great site. It's got great stuff. You can find Positive Talk Radio there, along with a bunch of other really cool podcasts. And I hope you'll do that. And going into the break, Mark, we were talking about my grandma, and she was a remarkable, special lady. Got to see her. She got to see me grow up, and she grew up as well. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 5 people still on the planet that knew her when she was with us still. She's been gone about 30 years. And when you were talking about legacy, the legacy that she has is that at every moment that I tell my kids about my grandma and how special she was. And I'm sure that my siblings and my cousins who knew her do the same exact thing. And that's, if you can create a legacy like that as the grandparent, like you and I have become, then I think that's a great way for our legacy to continue long after we are no longer physically walking around.
You know, the sad part of all of this is that there are just too many of us grandparents who don't care, who really don't care about our grandkids. You know, the latest study by Sharon and Furstenberg said that 30% of the baby boomer generation are considered remote grandparents, which means that they only have a chance to interact with their grandkids during maybe a birthday or maybe Christmas, and that's it. You know, this is a third of us. And if you take a look at the room, if there's one more person on this interview, one of 3 of us wouldn't care. You know, so if you think about it, a third of our generation just are not involved in helping to raise these kids, and you know that's pretty sad in my mind. You know, there's all kinds of reasons why we're not involved. A lot of it has to do with strife between us and our own kids. You know, our kids may have married a spouse that we don't like, so all of a sudden we're not involved with what they're doing. You know, we as very opinionated baby boomers give a lot of unsolicited advice. By telling parents what to do and disrespecting the boundaries between, you know, them raising their kids and us. You know, and so this we may drop in unannounced, things like that. That's what causes strife between the parents and the grandparents, and obviously the kids. But you know, we've got to be very concerned about that. Is a third of us just don't want to even be involved. So yeah, if we can get a message out to your listeners, is think about this. Think about the legacy you need to leave for this youngest generation so that they can talk about their grandmother just like Kevin's talking about his grandmother.
Exactly. And by the way, even though you've got children in Austin, Texas, and Orlando, Florida, and you've got a couple in Scottsdale where you live, there you still are involved with their lives, and there's no reason not to be now. And by the way, I do have to make an aside here, and that is if your son or daughter married somebody that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, it's up to you to bury that. You're the older one. You're the smarter one. You can let that go so that you can maintain a good relationship with your son or daughter and their spouse, and so that you can be involved with the kid's life rather than to just say, "Oh, poo poo, I don't care about any of them." Because I think you're right. 30%, that's a high number.
Well, and besides those other reasons we were talking about, tend to play favorites and we manipulate these kids as grandparents. I've got a favorite grandchild, but I'm not going to tell the world who that is. I haven't even told my wife who that is. So we've got to be very careful that those are one of the things we as grandparents may be controlling the kids through money and gifts and vacations, and their parents don't like that. That's one of the reasons we don't get involved. We as we grow older may have a lack of empathy. We think that we're compassionate, but we may not share the feelings like these kids need. I'm sure you saw with your 4-year-old, he needs a lot of feeling sharing. They have mood swings. We've got to be able to understand that. And we as grandparents, we sometimes, if the kid doesn't comply and they don't respect us, we say, I don't need that. I'm too old for that. I'm going to move on and do my own stuff. So, there's all kinds of reasons that we have to overcome, but we all need to think through that because, again, we want to be talked about like Kevin's talking about his grandmother. I mean, what better legacy to leave than that?
I tell you, you're right. And so I got to ask you, Gramps, why are so many of us that are a little bit older, longer in the tooth, when is it that we turn grumpy old men or grumpy old women, and cease to have the compassion and the desire to be with the younger generation? And some people will say, I'm so glad that I'm old now because now I can say whatever I want. That's really not true. People do it anyway.
One of the themes of my children's book is at what age do you begin to take responsibility for your actions? Is it 3 years old? Is it 13? Is it 23? I know plenty of 63-year-olds that still don't take responsibility for their actions. And I think that has a lot to do with it. We've got to start to realize who we are. You'd think by our age, we would understand who we are, and how we can help others. But, we're still not taking responsibility for our actions. And that's what we got to take and teach these little kids is take responsibility for your actions, and really, really, really get involved and admit when you make a mistake. A lot of us are afraid to admit when we make mistakes.
Why do you think that is? Because I make mistakes all the time, and I'm willing to admit to, well, most of them. I don't know. You do the best you can, but why do you think that we? Is it because we're now older and we think that we know better, and so we're not going to admit our mistakes?
Well, if you think about it, our generation, and including myself, we're very selfish. I mean, you think about how you got to where you are today. You got out of high school or college, you went on to your career, you focused on that. You may have ignored your family at the time. You may not have gone to all the kids' baseball games because you had to worry about work. We're very selfish, and I think that is the key to what this is all about.
Yeah, I tend to agree. When I was when I was a professional man and I was a professional sales guy, I had to, because I needed to make a little bit more money, I had to go on the road for 6 years. And when you go on the road, you're staying in motels, you're not around your kids. Your wife is, in my case, my wife is saying, I can't do this by myself. But you have to make a living. And so you go do what you got to do to go do that. I regret that today because there were things that happened while I was on the road or during that time period that my kids have a completely different memory of that than I do. And they'll tell me things today that are like, I can't believe that happened to you. Where was I? You were on the road. You know what I mean?
I was listening to your commercials and the new project that you're working on, which is, I think, is fabulous, is where companies give a part of their profit to help the nonprofits you're talking about. I think that's great. The first book I wrote was about entrepreneurship. It's called The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart.
And that's the one that Ariana Huffington read and invited you to participate with the Huffington Post, which is a big deal, by the way.
So the and I wrote that book because the company that I created that went public really was catering to moms and pops who are surviving and thriving against the chains. And so we were supplying wholesale and closeout products to make sure that they could really be competitive. But it brings up the subject kind of that you were alluding to, is, entrepreneurship, starting your own business. What do we're talking about starting your own business, after you've done your career business as baby boomers, but, it's a very scary thing to start your own business. Don't let anybody kid you about that. Because when you think about it, 50% of all new businesses fail in the first 5 years. And so if you think back and say, well, what causes these businesses to fail? Why take that chance when you know that half of them are going to fail and you're going to lose a lot of money? Why even step in there? Why not just be retired and move on and play pickleball? Well, when you think about it, 50% of the businesses fail. It still takes a lot of guts to open a business. But if you step back and analyze, why do these businesses fail? Well, 42% of these businesses fail because they have no market for the product that they have developed or service that they are doing. So if you think you've invented the greatest thing since sliced bread, but there's no market out there, you're gonna fail. And so you've got to make sure before you start a business that you come up with a product and test it to make sure people want it. I was early on in my career, I was a buyer for department stores. And the first thing that I learned is that I can't go out and buy things that I like. I've got to buy things that the customers like, because otherwise you're going to fail. So you got to step back and do that. That's the 40%, 2% of businesses fail because of that. 29% of businesses fail because they run out of money. They don't have enough cash. So if any of your listeners are thinking about opening a business, or if you're in retirement and want to open up your business, make sure you have enough capital to sustain you for 6 months as if you had no sales. So make sure that if you're going to open up a business, that you put enough money into it that if you have no sales for 6 months, that you can still be around. And then 23% of these businesses fail because they have poor teamwork and communications. Now, going back to the thought that we're all pretty egotistical. Entrepreneurs are very egotistical, but you've got to admit when there's things that you don't know, that you got to find people that are smarter than you. The successful businesses hire people that are smarter than the entrepreneur who started their business. And for using me as an example, I don't like spreadsheets. I don't like accounting. If you stick me in a room for 8 hours as an accountant, I will go absolutely nuts. So I've got to find people that are smarter than me, that love accounting, so that we can grow this. I've been in the internet business for a couple decades now, but I don't know how to write a program. I've got to find people who can write programs to do that. So you got to make sure that if you're going to be opening up a business today, that you hire people that are smarter than you around you in areas that you got to admit that you can't be the expert in everything. You've got to be able to find people that are the experts, and then you've got to learn to communicate. A lot of us entrepreneurs keep things close to our vest. We got to be able to tell people this is what our vision is. This is how we want to get there, and you got to be able to communicate. So much is I love small businesses, and starting. Keep in mind that half of them are going to fail. But if you take a look at those three things and you make sure that you don't fall into those things that causes these failures, I think you can succeed.
I would like to share with everybody and I do this whenever, and I'll do this for you as well, because Mark is an author. He's written a couple of books. I implore you to go, if you want to get either of his books or both of his books. I Don't Want to Turn 3, which is a great children's book, and also The Secrets of Retailing, How to Beat Walmart. If you want to go buy those books, go to a small family-owned retailer that is not a big box store. They'll do fine, the big box stores, but promote and support your local business, and that even works for restaurants, and that works for clothing and everything. Support your local guys because they're working their what else off every day to try and make it work. And it's like I'll tell you, Mark, in my particular case with Positive Talk Radio and kmmedia.pro, which are the companies that I operate, it's very difficult to make them successful because, as take Positive Talk as an example. Positive Talk Radio doesn't necessarily sell because I'm not selling doom and gloom and hate, division, and fear. I'm trying to do the positive thing and to bring people together in a positive way. And for whatever reason, advertisers tend to say, well, how many clicks do you got? How many listeners do you got? And how sensational is what you're saying? And what I'm saying is not necessarily sensational, but it's my passion to do something positive for people. And so if you want to support Positive Talk Radio, I highly encourage you to do so, because I can't go forever. You're right. There is a finite amount of money that is available if nobody wants to participate with you. But at the same time, I'm not going to go and become a negative Nelly and sell hate, division, and fear only to make a buck. Does that make sense?
You hit upon the word of the hour, and that word is passion. You have to have a passion for what you're doing, and to tie that back to my thing with children and kids, and why I wrote this book, I Don't Want to Turn 3. It's necessary for us, and again, the same thing you're going to be doing with your 4-year-old. It's necessary for us to teach children how to think, not what to think. And I think if we can teach children how to think, and they can see the passion that we have for different things, that's going to lead them to have passion for things as they grow up. They may have passion for things completely different than what you and I believe in or like, but that's okay, as long as they have the passion. And you've got this passion for your business, and that's why it keeps going. That's the word of the hour is, what kind of passion do we have? Do we have the passion to pass on our knowledge to younger kids, or then younger generations? Do we have the passion to build businesses like you are doing? That really is, we should all be thinking about, what is this positive talk that we can use, and how can we use our positive passion to help others?
And that ultimately is the design, because I say at the end of every show, which I will say again today, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. It's important for us to take care of each other, be kind, and to understand, yeah, there are differences between us, but they don't have to be a deal breaker. We can get through them and to work with people that we don't necessarily agree with, but we just need to be kind to everybody. And if we can do that, then we've accomplished a great deal. It's like you with the babyboomer.org. You're working to do that, and the group of you are working to do that, to be kind to folks, to give them positive information, and that's how I ended up on your website, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
The word kind is another great word to think about. here's an exercise I'd like everybody to think about doing every night at their table. And again, we do it with our grandkids, and I've starting to see some results on this. Ask them this one simple question: what did you do today that was nice to someone else? Okay, so here I'm talking to 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids. What did you do today that was nice to someone else? The first couple times you ask them that question, because it has to be consistent, they have no idea what you're talking about. So you have to give them some examples. You gotta tell them that open the door for your mom and dad so they can go through it. Help walk an old lady across the street. What is it that was nice to someone that you could do today? So if all of us at dinner time, and I guess we can even talk to our spouses about this, would ask the question, what did you do today that was nice to someone else? Can you imagine how different this country would be if every family did that and every little kid started thinking about, what did I do today that was nice to someone else? How different this world would be.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It would be a fundamental change in how we viewed each other and what we did with life. There's one other thing that you just mentioned that I want to point out to people, and that is, you said when you sit down to have dinner, do you know how few people of any age group sit down and have dinner at the dinner table and have a conversation so that you can ask questions like that and you can exchange ideas and that kind of stuff. That's one of the things that many of us do not do anymore.
Well, we have a big decision to make tonight. Are we going to watch Monday Night Football, or are we going to have dinner together? Because we can all be watching Monday Night Football and not talking about anything and eating dinner, or we could just turn it off for 20 minutes and have dinner together. So you're absolutely right.
Oh, that's heresy. Turn off football? Are you kidding me? No, I'm kidding. It is and and you want to talk about a great example for little kids is if you turn off your device and they'll turn off their device and then you can have a conversation. I was in front of a Whole Foods market the other day, and they have an ice cream dispensary inside. And these folks, it was a nice day, and they were outside, and it was a mom and a 8-year-old boy about, and a 12-year-old girl about, and they were sitting there having their ice cream together at the table, and they each had their own device. They weren't talking. They weren't saying hello. They weren't saying, how was your day? What can I do to help you? Anything like that. They were too busy and too engrossed in their device. So, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, put down your friggin' device and talk to your kids. That's my advice. What do you think?
Well, you just hit on the theme of the show today. Be the role model that you want others to be. We're talking about grandparents being the role model, parents being the role model. You're right. If you spend too much time on your screens, your child's going to spend too much time on their screens. If you're sitting there watching TV all night long, your child's going to be watching TV all night long. We are the role models. We, especially when you're talking about your grandchild is 4 years old, we can help shape how they perceive how to act as adults. So just remember that. Don't lose sight. We're the role models. And these kids, they're like sponges. They just reflect everything you do. So be conscious of that.
I think that is wonderful, wonderful advice. And by the way, we've only got a couple of minutes left in the show, and I want to step aside, and I would love for you to tell our audience anything that you would like them to know.
I think everyone should take the chance to go to babyboomer.org. And the reason being is that we have put together what we consider the 1,000 best experts of our generation and those who care about our generation, with all kinds of information for us. We're at the point now that we're thinking about, I've got to go to the doctor every day. I always made fun. I said, my grandmother, my mother, they're always going to the doctor. Well, all of a sudden, I'm that age now, and I'm going to the doctor. So it's like, it all comes about. But if there's the other thing that I heard recently is that we all don't have as many friends as we did when we were growing up. and there's reasons for that. We're isolated. We may be doing things that that cause that, but we have lost touch with these friends. Well, one of the missions of babyboomer.org is to bring together like-minded people to meet each other, and it may not be in the same neighborhood as yours, but if you have the same desires, the same ideas, the same compassion, the same passions as we were talking about, that's one of the reasons we built the site too, to find people with like-minded things that you want to do together. So I would just recommend that everybody just go home, just try it, take a look at babyboomer.org, see if it makes sense to join, and get into some of the groups we have, and just to improve the quality of your own lives.
Community is key, and it doesn't matter what your age is, doesn't matter who you are. You should seek out like-minded people to have a community. Again, I'd like to thank Mark Joseph. Go to babyboomer.org. Thank you, sir, for being here. I need to have you back on eventually, and we'll do this again, because I want to follow the site and see how you're doing. Okay
Great. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Mark, and have a great day, everybody. And by the way, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. We'll see you Wednesday at 4.